Welcome to the Money Insights Podcast, where high-income earners come to learn wealth-building strategies that will take them from high income to high net worth. With your hosts, financial and wealth-building experts, Christian Allen and Rod Zabriskie.
Welcome into the Money Insights Podcast, where we talk all things money and business. My name's Christian Allen. I'm here with my co-host, who we all lovingly know as Rod the Pod Zabriskie. Rod, what's going on, man?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. The weather's nice.
Oh, yeah.
And that always makes me feel better. So I got out there and did a nice brisk walk this morning.
Nice.
And got the blood flowing. So I'm
fresh
feeling good
air.
from that standpoint.
Nice.
How
I
about
like
you?
it.
You're good?
Good. Yeah, I'm loving the weather, loving the
Anything new,
time of
interesting?
year. Well, our son Jefferson was just received a mission call
Oh, that's right.
to go serve the church. He's going to go to Brazil.
Congrats to Jefferson on the road for the next couple years.
Yeah.
We'll have to keep track of what he's up to.
Yeah. That's good.
Okay. So Rod, today we wanted to make, today might be kind of a short and sweet episode, but I wanted to make sure we got something out there that's meaningful. And the reason that I decided on this kind of topic, and I'll get to the topic here in a second, is because as I was reading through some of the news articles, it just kind of caught my eye as a conversation that I feel like is worth having.
Yeah.
So we're just going to have a very authentic conversation around what it means to be rich. And we're going to focus on, at least we're going to start by focusing on how much income we might feel like we need in order to feel quote unquote rich. But then we'll work from there. So that's what I want to start with. Okay. And again, the reason for this, Rod, is because I was reading this article and it was entitled something like how much money Americans say they need in order to feel rich.
Yeah.
And so I'm reading this and like kind of reading the statistics and kind of getting an idea of what people think and why they think it. And I thought, okay, this is an interesting conversation for us. We focus obviously on high income earners, but we oftentimes don't even really define what that means.
Sure.
Right. So that could be pretty subjective. And certainly this conversation around what it means to be rich is very subjective. But I thought, let's have it and see where it takes us.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay. So Rod, let's play a guessing game for a second. Oh, actually we can't because we're doing a second take. So little context. We started this episode a few days ago and decided we needed to re-record it. And so I already did the guessing game with Rod. So I'm realizing in the moment that it won't be very much fun to guess. So I'm just going to give some statistics. I'm just going to give out some statistics that I think are interesting for us to think about, and will probably kind of spur our conversation forward. Okay. So people agree, Rod, in general, that it takes $200,000 or more to be rich. That's kind of the baseline number. Of income.
Yeah.
Yep. To feel rich. Okay. So it would be interesting though, if I were to ask people that make $200,000 or $300,000 a year, if they feel rich, it'd be interesting to, okay. So here's a question for you, Rod. Let's start with, from an income perspective, what it would take for you personally to feel like you're in that rich category. Again, realizing it's very subjective. And after the fact, we're going to go back and define what that means and kind of how we got there.
Yeah. Well, I live in Utah, which is going to be very different than other areas of the country, obviously.
Okay. So you bring up an important point already, which I guess we'll just get into them as we go. So the first point is location means something.
Sure.
Right? Like there is a massive difference, like you're talking about, between living in California, San Francisco, or New York and New Jersey compared to living in the great state of Utah, which is probably like on the lower middle half.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a good point. You live in Utah. So you're suggesting there, inferring that you may not need as much income as somebody living in a different location.
Yeah. To have the same standard of living and or be able to save more, invest more. Because I don't have to spend as much on just the day-to-day expenses.
Can I throw something out here though, Rod?
Yeah.
This is a contrast to your, I'm live in Utah, so it should take less.
Yeah.
But you also have a cajillion children.
It's true. Yeah, it's true.
And they're not cheap.
No.
So like that has to balance things out at least a little bit.
Yeah. Well, that's what's interesting is when anytime people talk about averages, and so the averages of what Americans say they need
Mhm.
to make to be rich is the 200,000. You always want to take that into perspective, right?
Yeah, I think so. So, but let me ask this.
Okay.
What is the impact for you of having that many children? So again, we brought up two things. So one is situation. I'm in a second marriage, so I'm divorced. I have 5 children. My situation might be very different than somebody in a first marriage that has 2 children or 1 child, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like similarly, what has it been like, or what do you feel like the impact of having like a large family is on that in the context of what does it mean? What does it take in order to feel, again, quote unquote, rich, which is of course very subjective.
Yeah. I would give huge props to my wife because she has like mastered the frugal, or I don't know if frugal is the right word either, but just the ability to make the dollars go far.
You
You know what I
guys
mean?
are extremely good at making money go far. And can I just tell you, it's kind of a really cool testament because well, 15 years ago when we started working together, you needed to do that,
Right.
right?
Right.
And now your world's very different, but you guys are still pretty solid at making things go.
Well, and it is really wild to think. So get this. I remember a time, and there were 9 of us in the house,
Mm-hmm.
and we were spending $200 a month on food.
Wow.
And we were eating fine. It's not like we were starving. It's not like we were like scraping the bottom of the barrel when it came to the end of the month. You know what I mean? But she
I love it.
she knew how to do it, and she would buy in bulk when when she had her buying price for the different things, and so when it was buying price, we bought a bunch of it, and we we make bread, and I mean, anyway, so there were a lot of things that go into it. We had chickens.
Oh, yes. I remember the chickens.
So.
Well, can I just tell you, Rod, being able to, like, that's an incredible skill that can go with you anywhere. And it doesn't necessarily have to translate just in terms of how to, spend less money on food. It could be like how to, it's the same principle that we talk about when we're talking about how to make the investment optimizer work at its finest, right?
Yeah.
It's doing those extra little steps that can create additional value.
Yeah,
And
we didn't call it this at the time, but it's like life hacks, right?
Yeah.
What do you do to make the dollars go further? Or, the shred method. Pay less in interest, even though you're taking advantage of the ability to use that debt.
Okay, can I tell you this though, Rod? The idea of being smart with your money when you have very little of it is so difficult, right? Because, and especially in a world where like you're coming and joining a world that's totally, well, what's the word I'm looking for? Commission based, right? It's totally based on performance. You're not getting any baseline comp. It's completely based on that. Well, so what happens is, well, and I'm throwing out just weird situations here, but in that situation, it's incredibly difficult to budget. And being able to like look at the long term when you get a little chunk of money, but you've gotten behind on some things, and now you're just like able to get back. To be able to make good decisions in those moments is impressive. So props to Jody for keeping the Zabriskie family on track. Okay, Rod, I want to move on. Here's a question that you don't know the answer to. Okay. So we're going to give this one is trivial now. How much does it take, Rod, to be in the top 1%? According to this same CNBC survey. Yep.
Okay. So, I mean, I would say 800,000.
Wow, Rod. Okay. Huge props. 829,000 puts you in the top 1%. And according to the survey, pretty much everyone seems to agree that much income puts you in the rich category. Here's the thing, Rod, I would strongly disagree.
Well, okay, so here's what's interesting about that, because rich, like you said, it's subjective, and I think the more you make, the more you feel like you have to make to be in that category.
Well, okay, so that's part of the survey. I'm glad you brought that up, because people that are making between 50 and 100,000, they're more likely to say $150,000 makes them feel rich.
Yeah.
Right. So the more income you make, according to the survey, the more money you felt like you needed to make in order.
Yeah,
well,
that makes
that's
sense.
Well, I was going to say it's called lifestyle inflation, and maybe that is part of it, but it's just psychology too.
Mm-hmm.
Taxes go up, right? Everything kind of amplifies across the board. So it's not that simple. And I'm going to leave a cliffhanger here, but I would disagree that 820,000 that if you just said there's no other parameters, $829,000 of income makes you rich, I would say that depends. That depends.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Absolutely.
we'll get to why that depends in a minute. Okay, but we got away from your number. So we got to go back to that. You didn't think I was going to let you off the hook on that. So we talked about a couple of things that are important. We talked about basically family situation, and really it could be a variety of situations that make your situation different.
Mm-hmm.
And then we talked about location. Are there other things floating in your head that would have an impact on what would make you feel like enough income is enough income to feel
I want to
rich?
add a part B to the location, because we were talking geographically, where you live in the United States. I would also say what neighborhood you live in makes a difference, because if I'm living among a bunch of people who are rich, or who at least I view as rich, and I don't feel like I'm living up to that, then my number's going to have to go higher as well.
Oh boy, you're describing Keeping Up with the Joneses.
It is. It's a real thing.
Okay, it's a real thing. I think that's absolutely true, right? Yeah. Like you buy a nice house and you're probably less likely to want to like park your 1980s green Datsun in the front of,
where everybody else has a boat and an RV and
a BMW, and you've got a drive. Okay, but everyone has their thing. So I think that's absolutely reasonable and fair. Now, I will say this. I have no problem with people who do those, I'm one of those people, right? But you have to be legitimately in a position where it makes sense and you're comfortable, right? So we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so back to your number, Rod. That was so you got to location. Are there what else is floating in your head?
Well, okay. So one other thing is
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm looking at my list and I don't want to forget this.
Okay.
You nailed it. This is what I have. Situation, where you live, current lifestyle. You nailed all three of those. I have two other things on my list.
Okay. One other thing that comes to mind, and this is may just be the way my brain works. I don't associate income with rich.
Okay, wait. You can't go there. That's for later, Rod. That's for later.
Another cliffhanger.
I appreciate the context, but I'm not going to let you finish that thought.
Okay. So then back to my number.
Yet.
I would say 300,000.
Okay.
Is my number.
Okay. 300,000
to get into that category. Okay. I actually have one other piece of context.
Okay.
And part of that is that people who are ambitious enough to get to a higher income want to continue to grow that income. So for someone to say where I am right now and the income I'm making right now is enough is extremely difficult for driven people.
Yeah.
Right. So you're going back to your point about the 829 or whatever it was of the 1%.
Mm-hmm.
If someone had the drive to get to that point, the chances are that the people I know that kind of fit that category, they want to continue to build that in
absolutely
a variety of different ways. And so maybe saying, oh, where I am now puts me in that rich category lessens the drive to keep pushing forward. Does that make sense?
Okay. Interesting. So there's like and I totally agree. This is all very subjective and psychological,
right?
Because the way that, our current position so heavily, and okay, Rod, can I bring up a couple other things? What about your previous relationship with money?
Sure.
That's one of the things that I had on there. So I was thinking about things like how you grew up with money, right? What your situation was, like maybe whether you were in a wealthy or middle class or a lower class family, probably dramatically impacts the way you view what it means to be rich. So if I had family money and Ivy League and I'm making, and I get out and I'm working at Goldman Sachs and I'm making $400,000 or $500,000 a year, that might feel like beginner level stuff. I'm just like, I'm not even close. Right.
Yep.
So I think that those things have just maybe as big of impact as any of those other components. And I just wanted to kind of mention the relationship with money. And then I would also say, Rod, it can take like that relationship with money can go in a lot of directions. It could be your just ability over the short time as an adult you've had to spend money. What have your spending habits been like?
Yeah.
Are you someone that tends to fall victim to lifestyle inflation beyond what's reasonable and safe?
Yeah.
Right. So
Well,
anyway, all those things.
and I would mesh those two ideas together and almost be like, it's really difficult for these really young adults because they kind of inherit the lifestyle that they grew up with. And it's just, that's their comfort level, is to do the things that they did with their parents and live in a nice place or whatever. Right. And so they want and kind of expect that right off the bat. And so it may be really difficult then, now moving to your second point, in terms of understanding what it may look like to live on less than that as a young adult, as opposed to just going out and putting it on the credit card or whatever to keep up with that level of lifestyle that they're used to.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Okay. So making sure that I review all of them. I told you I had your definition of what rich is, and we've kind of gotten there, but maybe not completely. Let's get to your definition of what being actually rich is. And I am welcoming you to go any direction you want.
Okay.
You're now at the place where you could move into your previous thought.
Sounds good. Because to me, and again, it may just be the way my brain works, rich is more of a net worth thing.
Okay.
Like, because for example, someone could make the $800,000 and spend all of the $800,000, and at the end of the year, they're no better off from a wealth standpoint, right?
Mm-hmm.
They may even be worse off, right? You hear about all these athletes that spend, and all of a sudden they're bankrupt, and you're like, how can that happen, right? You made $10 million last year, whatever it was. But
it happens. You're right.
Rich and wealth doesn't necessarily come from a high income. And that went into my number, right? So that 300, when I think about, okay, well, what can I make enough to live on today, a portion of that, but then be able to set aside a bunch of that to go out and invest and do other things with, to build the wealth and create that, level of rich or whatever. So,
okay. So what I'm hearing, Rod, and I agree with you, rich is not so much like an exact number, but for me, it's more of a feeling of security, right? Mm-hmm. And I would define it as the ability to spend according to my lifestyle without concern of financial hardship at all, right?
Yeah.
So going back to that $829,000 number, there's a couple ways to look at that, right? If I'm the person that's if I'm a surgeon and I'm working 80 hours a week to make my $829,000 of income, then while I have a great income, I'm probably not at a place where I'd feel comfortable saying I'm rich. Yeah. At least if I'm, in the earlier side of my career and haven't been a prolific saver. Mm-hmm. And by the way, we've met with many people who made a lot of money, who spent a lot of money, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So the idea of having the income alone doesn't create, for me, what it means to be rich. Now, but if you put it in a different context, let's say that I had underlying assets that were producing a passive income of $829,000, I would absolutely say that's that's
yes,
rich,
yes,
right?
Absolutely. Yep, I was
that's
thinking about
the
that
freedom.
too. Yep, the source of the income absolutely matters.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Because it's that surgeon. If you mentioned in the early part of their career when they haven't saved much, well, what about even in the latter part of their career where they're just feeling like, I've been overworked for so long, and I'm just ready to be done with it. I don't want to have to keep working 80, 90 hours a week to maintain my level of income. And we see that as well a lot for people who are motivated to create those passive streams of income so they can start to work themselves out of that overworked place.
So here's what I want to get to at the core of this, Rod. Like, everybody's going to have a different definition of what rich is. And
Mhm.
again, all of these factors are at play. But I think for us, okay, so let's go back to like the money insights methodology,
Mhm.
which is really to buy alternative assets to create passive income streams, which allow you to continue to grow your wealth, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And that's the formula to becoming well. And so here's the cool part. If I live in a place, if I'm like you, Rod, you may already be at a place where you feel very comfortably and rich because you live in the place that you live in. You have complete security in your business. Like those things create a sense of security that we just don't get
Mhm.
if you're relying completely on working every day. Oh, one of the things that's interesting about this methodology or like the formula is that the actual number is much less important than the formula itself.
Yeah.
Because as you said, I could be somebody that has $200,000 or $300,000, but I have it's completely passive. I feel totally secure in that. And that person might feel very wealthy. Well, while somebody else making $1 million a year and working their tail off, and maybe even if they're not, that person, this is what people don't realize, Rod. And I'm going to go off on a little tangent. Maybe our audience does realize this because most of them are very high income earning people already. But like you said, the more you make, the more it feels like you need to make in order to be wealthy, to be rich. But it's not just because of lifestyle inflation.
Mhm.
Rod, taxes are a massive play in
Yeah.
that, right?
Absolutely.
And what happens to people oftentimes is they're really excited about their new income. They make $1 million and they realize that it feels pretty similar to when they made $700,000
Right.
because they, paid $150,000 more in taxes than they did at the $750,000 mark. So,
Yeah.
like, while all of these factors come into play, that is one that I think from a formula standpoint, people have to like learn to get right.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
when you're figuring out that methodology of what it means to be rich, I love the formula of having assets that are creating passive income. And again, those assets could be anything, right? Like we
Mhm.
oftentimes talk about real estate, and those are great assets to have, but it could be a variety of different things. It could be your business,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
I feel a tremendous amount of security because of what exists inside of the business that we've built.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be one specific thing. It can be whatever you want, and the income number can be whatever you want it to be. And so like the formula just works no matter what situation you're in.
Yeah, what I hear you saying is you almost have to boil it down to the actual take-home spendable number and almost work backwards from that. Now, there are obviously tax strategies that you can use to reduce the tax burden, and that will help with that take home.
And
But
should, by the way,
absolutely.
if you're in that situation, it's harder as a W-2 income earner, but there's still things you can do. And I
Absolutely.
would say do the best you possibly can because, man, uh, well, I was just thinking about this, Rod. Like we had an expense not long ago that came up and it was like another 20 grand, right, in the business.
Mhm.
And I was like, gosh, that's crazy. That we just like toss around 20 grand. So, like it's nothing.
Mhm.
Um, and then I had this thought in my head that was like, gosh, what's even crazier is that if I made some very small tweaks on my taxes, I could have saved the money needed to pay that exact bill.
Yeah, that's a
So
great
it's
point.
just kind of an odd way, like an interesting way of thinking. Okay, sorry, I'm getting all over the place on this, but Rod, I want to wrap this up and just I want to finish up by just getting some final advice from our old wise partner at Money Insights, and just kind of give us your thoughts on kind of any concluding thoughts or advice around this subject of what it means to be rich.
Yeah, I am the old guy around here. Okay, so I have talked about this book called Your Money or Your Life, which is an interesting read. And basically, the premise of it is that if you spend all your life to earn money and that's your only focus, then that's what you get out of life, the money, right? Well, if you then take a step back and you say, well, why do I care about the money? Why does that matter? And it's the things that it can do for you in your life, right? my ability to create experiences, to have, it's not the things that are the more important thing. It's the things that facilitate relationship building and again, experiences with family or whatever. So when you think about this whole question about how much income or how much wealth does it take to be rich, think about what that means for you and how you can make the world a better place by having done that.
Love it, Rod. Good advice. Okay. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us this week. We hope to see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Money Insights Podcast. To learn more about the financial and business strategies discussed in this show, please visit moneyinsights.net. The views and opinions expressed on the Money Insights Podcast are not intended to be individual financial, tax, or legal advice. Always consult with the appropriate advisor before making financial decisions. And if you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This will help others find the show and learn wealth-building strategies for themselves. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.